Hello and welcome to a cover story interview with Professor K. Srinath Reddy. He's the president of the Public Health Foundation of India and also a renowned cardiologist and an epidemiologist. Something we need very much in today's world, Professor Reddy. Another winter, another new variant. So it's going to be a. What is your first reaction to the new variant that is coming in? The Omicron, I think, right?
Not unexpected in terms of emergence, but unexpected in terms of timing.
I thought winter, this is the time when it happens.
Well, the virus may come in, but the fact that this particular variant has emerged now with many more mutations and suddenly struck us, I don't think the world was prepared for that kind of a change. They were still looking at a resurgence of Delta. But this new variant coming in with so many spike protein mutations, increased infectivity, and the potential to evade some of the immunity conferred by previous vaccines, that I think has come as a threat. The only silver lining so far is that the cases reported so far from South Africa and from Netherlands are only showing very mild symptoms. So this may actually predict a part of the evolution of the virus into a more infectious but less virulent form.
Yeah, this is what we were hoping for also. But you're saying the vaccinations, can you explain? Because this is also a spike protein, but has it mutated into something that escapes the vaccination? Why are vaccinations not as effective?
Actually, the way the South Africans detected the variant was that they were looking for a gene which particularly identifies the spike protein, and they didn't find the gene. So the fact is that it changed the spike protein configuration in such a manner that the original gene was not detected. Now, if you have multiple spike protein mutations, where it's not just the number, but the change in the configuration, then the antibodies that have been developed against the spike protein by the previous versions of the vaccine may not be able to recognize the spike protein, may not be able to combat it in the bloodstream and tie it down before it starts entering cells. The idea of the vaccines producing antibodies is that they will hold the virus before it gets attached to the ACE receptors of the cells and starts entering the cells. Of course, there are other defenses when the virus does enter the cells. The T cells come into play. But the antibodies are particularly effective in the major line of defense in the bloodstream. Now, if the antibodies are unable to recognize this virus because the spike protein has changed the configuration, there is the danger that not only the extra spike proteins can give it a better attachment to the ACE receptor of the cells, but the virus will go unchallenged or with limited challenge in the bloodstream. So that is the concern.
And we're also in the process of developing a nasal vaccine. Will that be more effective in countering this or no?
Well, it might, because that is a vaccine that may develop or still has to be proven though. Mucosal antibodies or IgA, the secretory antibodies. The secretory antibodies will fight it off even before it enters the lungs or the bloodstream. Because they will fight it off on the surface of the mucosa, whether it is in the nose or the throat. And therefore, it is expected that the virus will not get a foothold into the body. So if they actually turn out to be very successful, even the initial infection can be prevented or limited, whereas the current vaccines are fighting the virus off after it has entered and established itself in the upper respiratory tract, before it starts damaging other tissues in the body, especially the lungs.
That makes sense. But I was reading something that you've written recently where you had advised saying that travel bans don't really work, are not the answer, really. Can you explain our reaction to the virus? Everybody's rushing to ban flights and this and that, but even WHO has advised against it. So I think you are in sync with the WHO on that one.
Well, travel bans are a reflexive response. I don't want to call it knee-jerk, but let me put it a more polite word, a reflexive response, not a reflective response. Because if you reflect, then you'll recognize that travel bans didn't work in preventing the virus from spreading from China. It didn't prevent the alpha variant from spreading from UK. It didn't prevent the Delta virus from spreading all over the world. So in a sense, the virus will find ways to go through. It may delay to some extent the spread of the virus into some countries, but you will not be able to screen every single passenger and hold them captive in the airport because some of them may be asymptomatic. Some of them may be early in infection, and the RT-PCR will not be able to detect it. Now, you've had people taking the flight from South Africa to Netherlands, all with negative RT-PCR tests. And lo and behold, a fairly large proportion of them turned out to be positive later on. So the virus will sneak through. So having travel bans is only going to delay to some extent, but it's not going to prevent. On the other hand, it will create many other disruptions. So we'll have to weigh the costs versus the limited benefits.
You had a dig, I think, at one of our chief ministers in your article when you said people who tom 97% serological surveys and herd immunities are now rushing to ask for travel bans. But is our herd immunity going to, our immunity going to work in terms of, the other argument is let the virus come in and build the immunity since it's not as lethal as hopefully the Delta variant?
Well, it might be the best case scenario, but we still have to wait for it. You see, if it turns out to be more infectious, but far less virulent, if it really turns out, this or the next version of the variant, then it might turn out to be like a live attenuated virus vaccine. We have had some live attenuated virus vaccines. So it may turn out to be like that and may give you some nice immunity without necessarily extracting a toll in terms of severe disease. We don't know. That could be the path of evolutionary biology for this particular virus. But it will only follow that path of evolutionary biology if we offer it resistance. We offer it resistance by way of masks, not allowing it easy access into our bodies by not crowding, preferring ventilated spaces, and by getting the vaccines to the extent possible, which can provide some protection. Now, I'm not saying that the current vaccines do not offer any protection. We saw diminished protection against the beta variant. We saw some diminished protection against the Delta variant, but there was still protection against severe disease and death. So it is possible that even here you may find the same thing. It's also possible that people who have already had a natural infection exposed to the full virus may have a better complement of antibodies against multiple antigens and may be able to resist the virus. Similarly, with the vaccine made with an inactivated virus, like the Covaxin, that may have a better protection because it offered the body an opportunity to acquaint itself with the multiple antigens of the virus. And even if the spike protein antibodies were not as exuberant as in the case of the mRNA vaccines, at least there was a broader band of immunity produced, which may stand to protect, even in terms of the antibody complement, which can actually fight the virus in the bloodstream itself before it gets into the cells. These are somewhat speculative, based on possible mechanisms. But I'm sure we'll get some reassuring news from the National Institute of Virology, which even when the Delta virus came in, they tested and found that the immunity induced by Covaxin in particular was very strong against the Delta virus. They also said that even the Covishield also worked, but with a slightly reduced efficacy. But now contrast that with what the CEO of Moderna is saying. He is saying that there's going to be a marked reduction in the immune protection from mRNA vaccines against this variant. I mean, he has already started saying that and saying that they're going to tweak the vaccines. So in a sense, some of the enthusiasm that we had for mRNA vaccines as a huge success in science may not be borne out now in public health because the virus has some tricks up its own sleeve.
Yeah, may actually then our Made in India vaccine may be vindicated in the end.
Yeah,
despite all the brickbats.
If that is so, then we need to produce much more of it. The problem with Covaxin is the limited production capacity. We need to step it up.
And actually sooner rather than later, because again, we don't want it to hit us and then rush in with all the emergency support system. We should do it now, in fact.
Yes, we should. We should. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure the government is putting in a little more money behind the effort, but we do need to produce more vaccines. But even, you see, the thing is, either you produce a lot of antibodies against the spike protein so that despite the mutations, it's still captured. So the virus subparticle protein vaccines that are being produced, for example, Novavax and now Biological E is producing, we'll have to wait and see whether it's putting in more antibody troops against the spike protein or not. But on the other hand, you may be wanting to have a more broadband immunity against multiple antigens rather than being selectively devoted only to one antigen. In fact, Catherine Wu of Atlantic wrote some months ago that the problem is that most of the current vaccines have a monogamous relationship with the spike protein.
Yeah, that is true. And also, have do you sympathize with the African doctors and people who are saying that why are you making us the bad guy? All we did is identify the protein. It's not really made in Africa per se. We just identified the virus, the new strain.
Well, if it was not a television program where I had to sit and be available for the camera, I would get up and salute the South African doctors, frankly, because they have a very efficient surveillance system for genomic analysis. Mm-hmm. They detected it very fast. Botswana too. I mean, people don't give enough credit to African science capacity. So it was detected both in Botswana and South Africa, and they did it within a week. And you contrast that to what happened in the UK, where a sample was drawn from a person in Kent in September 2020. The sample is analyzed in November 2020, and the alpha variant is found. And they disclose it to the world only in December 2020 when the cases start going up in UK. Now, the South Africans acted with great responsibility, and I think the world should be thankful for them, as President Biden said.
In fact, one of the views is this only that, if you impose travel bans, then countries won't come forward and identify and, in full disclosure, because they'll be so scared, they'll be punished for it, as is what is happening with all these flight bans.
No, absolutely. Now, look, we have got the latest news from Netherlands. Whereas these people disclosed the virus on 23rd as the variant in South Africa and Botswana. In Netherlands, now they've discovered that samples collected on the 19th also revealed the virus in Netherlands. So the question is, even a few days before South Africa revealed it, that means these samples were tested later. So how do you know that where the virus variant came from in Netherlands? And did it come from people who had traveled to South Africa or not is not yet clear. So you cannot only blame the people who have actually revealed the presence of the virus. We do not know where the virus emerged, where the variant emerged. The variant could have emerged in multiple places. It's not unlikely because the virus is all over the world and it is experimenting with mutations all over the world. It is not that because humanity emerged from Africa in the first place, all viruses will have emerged from Africa. The variants can emerge from any part of the world. We have seen Lambda, we have seen others emerging, and Delta is supposed to have emerged in India. So I think blaming countries for variants is one of the worst things we can do. That will actually discourage honesty in science. And it will also lead to unnecessary, apart from ostracizing, it will also lead to the things like knee-jerk reflexes like the travel bans.
Professor Reddy, is it, that famous, the question that everybody is now asking, is it now time for a booster dose? Because, apart from the new mutation, there's also healthcare workers, the elderly, they all had the dose, I think, in February, March. So it's been over 6 months since their second dose. Should we now push for that? And do we have the supplies?
On the basis of what can be called biological public health logic, yes. On the basis of looking at the logistics of administration with the supplies we have, perhaps the government is waiting to complete the full complement of 2 doses for everybody in the adult population before they start thinking of booster doses. But that, I believe, was an assessment that was made before the emergence of the new variant. And they may be reviewing the situation to see whether there are groups that need now additional protection through boosters. I cannot really speak for the government, but I'm sure the situation will be under review.
A lot of countries have already gone in for the booster dose. I think the UK has already announced, and US, and this thing. So in that, and we have, unfortunately, in India, the way our system is working, we have a whole lot of supplies also. We were doing a show with Dr. Harsh Mahajan, who said the private hospitals that procured the vaccination at a slightly higher price have now got them in supply, while their crowds are going for the free vaccination centers. So there should be some way to distribution also, where you can merge the private hospitals, maybe give them a bigger subsidy. I don't know how to do it.
See, the private hospitals have acquitted themselves well in giving the vaccines in the metros, but they took a lot of supplies which they couldn't deliver in the small towns and the villages. So that was the problem there, because their presence in terms of large organized sector, organized private sector in small towns and villages is pretty low. So I think the public sector has to be dependent upon for penetration into deeper territories. But if second dose vaccines are decided upon, booster dose vaccines are decided upon as a matter of policy by the government, then certainly it will start again in the metros, because that's where the immediate danger is going to be of a new variant entering and spreading. So that is where I believe the private sector can step in again. But the same mistake that we made last time of expecting the private sector to get 25% of the supplies and use them efficiently across the country, that should not be made again.
How do you, in terms of, even still today, there is a vaccine hesitancy. So have you, are there any ways one can overcome that? Any innovative ways, give somebody incentives for taking the vaccination or something, is there some, in terms of, in using your experience in public health, is there some suggestion you can come up with?
Well, basically, I believe that we ought to really overcome the hesitancy by not only talking to people about the protection offered by vaccines, including against the new variant, but also utilizing the channels which are much more extensive rather than just mass media channels. Mass media is very important, no doubt about it. But I think ultimately hesitancy and incorrect information exist at local community group level. So neighborhood conversations are very important. Trusted voices in the community are very important. Engaging locally influential voices, using community-based groups to have regular neighborhood conversations is going to be very important. Otherwise, beaming messages only through the public media is only going to inform them but not really sensitize them.
Finally, what is your, I can't ask anyone for a prediction, but some health prediction for the coming months. Are we going to have a winter vacation? Should we cancel our vacations? Or what would be your advice for the coming months?
Well, I think we are still waiting to see how the new variant behaves. If the initial information that's coming from different parts of Africa as well as Europe is correct, and the illness that is caused by this virus is relatively mild, I think our scare will be much less and we'll move with a little greater sense of freedom. Though we ought to be ready for some mild illness, because we may not have the immunity against this new variant when it comes in. But I think all the precautions of avoiding huge crowds and wearing masks everywhere, that is something that we must continue for some months more. Because not only it will protect us, it will also nudge the virus to move to a less virulent form. It will nudge the virus to become more infectious but less virulent. Now, in terms of whether we can actually travel for holidays, that we'll have to wait and see over the next 2 or 3 weeks to see what the situation in India is and then decide upon it. By that time, we'll get more information on how the virus is behaving in any case. So basically, as I was telling somebody else, it's like, you're playing cricket and you're facing a new bowler for the first time, a bowler who has not been seen much even in the international cricket. And now suddenly the bowler is introduced into the game. So you play defense for a while till you understand the style, and then you can open up.
Hold that sixer for a while.
Yes, hold that sixer for a while. Don't step out of the crease and get stumped.
All right. On that note, I have one also final question. I'm going to list these 3 illnesses and ask you which is the biggest threat as of today. Is this new coronavirus? Is it dengue, or is it the pollution? As of today, where we stand, which is the biggest threat in terms of health?
Well, right now, I think dengue is, because it is there with us. Pollution is there. Pollution will aggravate the effect of any illness. It will definitely aggravate the illness even due to the new variant if it comes in. So pollution is something that we ought to fight, but we can't immediately do something about it. Because this requires several measures. We certainly must do something about it with a sense of urgency, but it's not going to happen overnight. Dengue is something that is immediately with us. On the other hand, the coronavirus responsible for COVID in terms of the Delta variant is relatively on the quieter side now. Now, if the new variant comes in and cases start rising, then we'll have to pay a lot of attention to it as well. Right now, we are preparing our defenses. But in terms of actually responding to it in terms of containing the damage, then we may have to be much more alert and active. So on today's date, I would put dengue up front. Then I would put COVID and air pollution together.
On that note, thank you so much for this conversation, and stay safe. And I'm sure we'll have many more such conversations. But thank you for now. Thank you, Professor Reddy.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.